Hello, dear friends. History repeats itself first as tragedy and then as farce, said Karl Marx. All business schools study Marx for his wisdom, but his theories do not work when applied to politics in the form of liberticidal communism. Opinion piece. Banking panic. Domino effect. Systemic risk. Banks in trouble. Forced landing. Risk of contagion. System collapse. Every man for himself. Crucial weekend. Gold shines again. Everything goes in a slow motion. We are at the crossroads. The crisis benefits Bitcoin. Risk for another 186 banks. Economists warning. Central banking system fails. We are in very dangerous waters. The remedy would be gold backing. Trump says he would be stopped on Tuesday. He would be arrested. Scientists talk of a hollow F. Let's start. The banking panic is reminiscent of the spectre of 2008 because in less than a week the banking system has suffered the biggest crash in history. The breakneck speed at which the banking industry plunged into turbulence has shaken markets and governments, reviving memories of the 2008 financial crisis. The effect could be just as long-lasting as in 2008. According to Mark Sira, First Republic Bank is still collapsing, even after they invested $30 billion to turn it around. It's still broken, and we are watching things unfold. The banking system is collapsing under its own weight. The end of the movie should be near, but no one knows when. The banks survived another week, and the biggest ones look like winners. The banking giants are the beneficiaries of the industry turmoil. They have cheap stocks and great dividend yields. The big problem for small banks is that they have too many commercial real estate loans. Rapid and dramatic events have fundamentally changed the landscape for banks. Now big banks can grow. Smaller banks can struggle to keep up, and more regional lenders may close. Meanwhile, regulators will look to increase scrutiny for the mid-sized firms bearing the brunt of the stress. Crucial weekend. The long-awaited weekend for the implementation of the ISO standard has finally arrived. It is a migration that started in 2020 and ends next Monday. In the course of Monday, it will be possible to determine whether the migration has been successful. After years of hard work, it is amazing to see our efforts come to light. This is how the migration to the ISO 20022 standard in Europe, Digit 2, will proceed this weekend and next Monday. On Saturday and Sunday, banks move their position to the new European Central Bank system and verify the correct accounting. On Monday morning, things could be exciting at the banks because of the mandatory implementation of the new ISO standard. Then the first live transactions will take place. Throughout the day, checks are made to ensure that all payments with the correct information reach the correct recipients. Basel III ensures that banks have sufficient reserves to cope with a liquidity crisis. Basel IV aims to complete the Basel III package of rules to strengthen stability, increase financial resilience, and facilitate financial intermediation, which is lending to households and businesses. Basel IV makes credit more expensive for companies. Basel IV will change the rules of the game not only for banks but also for companies in terms of access to finance. The regulation will revise global bank capital requirements, changing the corporate lending landscape, particularly in Europe and the Nordic countries. Definition: ISO 20022 is a standard for the electronic exchange of data between financial institutions. The standard covers financial information transferred between institutions, including payment transactions, security trading and settlement information, credit and debit card transactions, and other financial information. The repository contains a large amount of financial services metadata that has been shared and standardized across the industry. A 2015 report by the Federal Reserve System classified Europe as major adopters of the standard, India, South Africa, Japan, Singapore, and Switzerland as growing adopters, and Australia, Canada, the UK, and New Zealand as interested adopters. The report concluded that the Fed should encourage the adoption of ISO 20022. Systemic risk. Systemic risk is the risk of contagion that occurs in a financial crisis as a result of its concentration in a certain sector of the economy, which can directly affect the rest of the productive sectors. The banking sector is the one with the greatest systemic risk, given that it can have a very negative impact on the evolution of the entire economy. After the financial crisis of 2007-2011, institutions around the world became even more concerned about developing risk control systems in the banking sector, as the risk of contagion could have disastrous consequences for the economy. For this reason, control systems and mechanisms have been improved in the Basel Accords, as they provide guidelines to prevent dangerous events in the financial sector. Domino effect. More than 186 banks are set to collapse, according to analysis by Silicon Valley Bank. The dangers of future bank withdrawals have risen to a level that could and would threaten the stability of markets and the banking system. We are at the crossroads, and the path we take going forward will determine the quality of our lives. Economists warn of risk to 186 other banks. More than $300 billion of uninsured deposits could be at risk, the study says. Amid the failure of Silicon Valley Bank, at least 186 other US banks could be exposed to similar risks, according to a study published this week in the Social Science Research Network. Economists analyzed how the Fed's rate hikes have affected bank assets and their impact on financial stability. Thus, even if only half of uninsured depositors decided to withdraw, 186 banks would be at risk, with $30 billion of uninsured deposits potentially at risk, the paper says. The study also notes that the market value of the US banking system assets is $2 trillion below their book value. The value of such assets have fallen by an average of 10%, with the 5% of banks that have suffered the most severe losses, recording a 20% decline. Taking together these estimates suggest that recent declines in the value of bank assets very significantly increase the fragility of the banking system in the face of uninsured deposit withdrawals, the authors of the research concluded. Last Friday, Silicon Valley Bank staged the largest bank failure since 2008 global financial crisis. The country's 16th largest bank failed after savers withdrew their money as concerns about the banking crisis spread. 2 days later, regulators closed Signature Bank due to systemic risks and in order to prevent contagion in the sector. Financial news. Apollo's slug says the banking crisis will lead to a hard landing. Investors rush into gold amid banking crisis. Bitcoin got a big week as banks sold off. Investors flee crypto funds at a record pace despite being Bitcoin bullish then. Opinions. According to Judy Bincodon, we are in a global black swan economic crisis event due to the failure of the central banking system. There are 173 banks around the world that failed this week and were not reported by the mainstream media. According to the X22 report, they used the collapse of the banking system to create an event to push the central bank's digital currency agenda, because without this event they could not force the legislature to take the next steps. Only the restoration of precious metal-backed currencies can save us. According to David Lifshultz, the infidels are trapped in their own artisanal device. It should be remembered that the collapse of the Kreditanstalt in Vienna in 1931 precipitated the financial collapse of Germany that led to the fall of the Weimar Republic. Donald Trump believes he would be arrested on Tuesday and calls on his supporters to protest. According to Juan Osabin, there have been multiple assassination attempts on Trump, Putin and Xi Jinping, which is why they are never seen in public and use doubles, clones and rubber masks. He believes he wouldn't be the real Trump if he was arrested. He says we are in a very dangerous waters. Make sure you book a few things. Juan opines that the puppets you see are not the ones you have to worry about, but the ones you can't see because they are behind the scenes. The game is to trick us into doing exactly what they want us to do, which is to jump in front of a moving train. Everything goes in a slow motion. In a recent video, Juan Osabin said, "Could this war go faster? Maybe. But there would be many more casualties, and therefore fewer people would cross the ascension finish line. It is going slowly and it is completely hidden. In the Old Testament, the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night that the ancient slaves had to follow through the wilderness after leaving Egypt never moved faster than the oldest man or the youngest boy could move with it. It did not go at the pace of a runner. It moved at a slow pace so that everyone could walk together." Miscellany. Spanish influenza denounces what happens to those who live the Jehovah's Witnesses. Soraya Narez spoke about her experience of leaving the religious organization considered by some to be a cult. The Earth's inner core may be more complex than scientists thought. Seismic waves suggest our planet has a secret chamber at its center. Chile takes out earthquake insurance with the World Bank for $630 million. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.